about this subject? You find this subject very difficult, very easy, or maybe it's average? No idea. Okay, today we are going to discuss some current issues, isn't it? And particularly the going on war between the RBI and the government of India, isn't it? And that's why few changes you have seen, and few changes they are going to come very soon, isn't it? Basically, the reason behind this dispute is the growth versus inflation theory, isn't it? Yes, RBI is working on inflation theory, government is working on growth theory, isn't it? And the relationship between growth and inflation, do you have any idea of that? Isn't it? What type of relationship is there between growth and inflation, isn't it? Because remember, RBI is working on inflation theory and the government is working on growth theory, isn't it? So unless you know the relationship between inflation and growth, isn't it? These problems, isn't it? You can never understand. So after discussing all these things, isn't it? We will be discussing the new concept that is called MPC, isn't it? Monetary Policy Committee. Okay, and various issues associated with that we are going to discuss. Okay, let me discuss first. You know meaning of inflation? It is the state where prices of goods and services are rising. And when prices increase, what will happen to the purchasing power of your money? Purchasing power of your money, it is going to come down. Okay, on the other side, it is the concept of growth. You know meaning of growth? Growth is said to be a necessary condition. Growth is the rate at which production is increasing. And in economics, everything is moving around the world production. Growth is said to be a necessary condition, isn't it? Before we can think of getting any of the other economic objectives, maybe poverty, maybe unemployment, maybe reduction in the gap of inequality, the necessary condition is your production must increase, isn't it? I said it's a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient condition, isn't it? The sufficient condition is it's a distribution of income. See what happens, isn't it? There are three sides of the same coin: production, income, and expenditure. Whenever production is taking place, what will happen at the same time, isn't it? By the same amount, income will be generated, isn't it? And this is the policy of not only of India, but of the whole of the world, isn't it? Okay, let us move the country forward by increasing production, isn't it? When production increases, what will happen? Income will be generated, and generation of income is said to be a necessary condition. Okay, so production, income, and expenditure, isn't it? All the three, they are always going to be equal. These three are basically the three sides of the same coin, isn't it? But yes, we have to start from production. That's why growth word is always discussed. Isn't it? Everybody is talking about growth rate. World Bank is talking about growth rate. IMF is talking about growth rate. Our ministers are talking about growth rate, isn't it? All politicians, isn't it? They are talking about growth rate, isn't it? Every after 2 days in the newspaper, growth rate is revised, isn't it? Nobody is talking about poverty. Nobody is talking about unemployment, XYZ. So why growth is discussed everywhere? Because growth is a necessary condition. Whenever, isn't it, production increases, what will happen? Income will be generated. And yes, the sufficient condition is, isn't it? Whatever income the country is able to generate through growth, it should move into the pockets of the poor, so that gap of inequality decreases. So our problem is not only of production, but also of distribution. Over the years, isn't it, growth rate of India, it is more than satisfactory. It means the country is able to generate, isn't it, additional income. But because of the poor distribution policy, this additional income, whatever country is able to generate, it is not moving into the pockets of the poor, it is moving into the pockets of the rich, thereby increasing the gap. But anyhow, generation of income is going to be a necessary condition. Now, production, isn't it? Growth rate, the rate at which production is increasing. So, who is going to do the production? They are called the producers. They are called the producers. And producers are said to be the drivers of the country, isn't it? Drivers of the country. See, there are three stages, isn't it? Things are going to work. The first role is of the government to create the platform, isn't it? Yes, infrastructure, law and order, isn't it? So, environment has to be made conducive, and it will be done only by the government with the help of nowadays, isn't it? With the help of private sector as well. That's why government of India is working on PPP model. Okay, so the first role is of the government to create platform. So first investment has to come from the government, then comes the drivers of the country, and they are said to be the producers. isn't it? So they will then set up their industry, isn't it? And they will start doing the production. So when they start doing the production, in that production process, job opportunity is going to be created, and then our turn comes. We will get the job, isn't it? Income will be generated, and then we can raise ourselves, isn't it? So there are three stages, I said. The first role is of the government. First investment has to come from the government. Then comes the drivers of the country, and they are the producers. It's a case of supply-driven economy. Drivers of the country is not going to be the consumers, isn't it? It is going to be the producers, isn't it? And then when producers, I said, start doing the production, in that production process, job opportunity will be created, and then we people will get the job, income will be generated to we people, and then we people, we are able to increase our, whatever they are, standard of living, you can say, isn't it? Okay, so the drivers are going to be the producers. Now, those people who are said to be the drivers, isn't it? Do you think they should be encouraged? Should they be encouraged? Should they be incentivized? Yes, isn't it? So my question is, what can be the best incentive? Every year in May, few questions are coming around these things, isn't it? This year also, definitely questions are going to come. So my question is, you people are the producers, suppose you are the drivers of the country. So you should be incentivized by the government. So what can be the best incentive given to you people so that you are encouraged? What can be the best incentive? Okay, there are so many. Some people they say, yes? Tax reform, giving them tax benefit, okay? Then maybe in many cases giving them subsidies, law and order, providing infrastructure, there are so many. And moreover, sufficient capital at a cheap rate. Remember this point, isn't it? Because of that, some controversy there. Availability of sufficient capital, and that too, availability of sufficient capital, and that too at a cheaper rate, isn't it? Okay, so there are so many things, and every point is correct. But I am concerned with the best incentive, and best incentive is said to be inflation. Best incentive is said to be inflation. Inflation means prices are going to rise, isn't it? At constant prices, they are not going to take the initiative, isn't it? They will take the initiative only when prices increase, isn't it? But remember, up to certain level, isn't it? And yes, when prices increase, it is going to increase their profit margin, and profit can be the best incentive. And that's why it is said that if a country is looking for moving forward, isn't it? Drivers, they have to be incentivized, and for that, rate of inflation, ideally, isn't it? It is said to be 4%. Isn't it? Said to be 4%. Inflation in between 3 to 4%, it is said to be a necessary condition for growth, isn't it? This question came last year, isn't it? At constant prices, when prices are stable, definitely drivers are not going to take the initiative. They will not do the production. Job opportunity is not going to be created, isn't it? Okay, we people are consumers and the producers. In between consumers and producers, only one thing is common, and that is called price. That is called price. But our relationship with the price is totally different. Being the consumer, we people, isn't it? We people, consumer, they try to pull the price down. And that's why for we people, for the consumer, there is a law of demand. Lower the price, higher the demand, isn't it? Yes, we try to pull the price down. But what about the producers, isn't it? They will try to pull the price up, isn't it? Because prices are going to determine their profit margin, and that's why for them there is a law of supply. And that says higher the price, higher the supply. If you offer me, isn't it, higher prices, I am going to produce more. So in between, the relationship is totally different. We are trying to pull the price down, and they are trying to pull the price up. Okay, why I said 4% inflation, up in between 3 to 4% internationally, it is said to be ideal state. Okay, if rate of inflation is 4%, I don't think consumers, they are going to be hurt very, very badly, but its benefits are going to be maximized, because it is going to encourage the drivers, the drivers. Okay, I'm asking one question from you people. All you people are producers, and you have decided to do something, means to do production of something. Now there are three products: product A, product B, product C. Price of product A is increasing, that of B is constant, and that of C, it is falling. You are going to do the production of what? A, B or C? Price of A is going to increase, it is increasing. That of B is constant and that of C, it is falling. So you will prefer to produce A, B or C.
It depends. It depends.
Yes, what is your answer?
B, I would say. It depends upon the demand of the product.
Don't say demand, isn't it?
As a producer, I prefer for now.
I'll go for A.
You will go for A, yes? Why A? Right. Because prices are increasing, definitely it is going to attract the investors. There is no question of producing C, isn't it? Okay, regarding B, prices are constant, isn't it? So here your profit margin is going to stabilize, isn't it? So definitely when the prices increase, their profit margin increases. So ultimately it is going to attract investors. What we can say, isn't it, in our surrounding, you can say in Karol Bagh, isn't it? Somebody has started some business, isn't it? And yes, it's a huge demand. He is earning huge profit. What will happen? Tomorrow, सब लोग वही business करेंगे, isn't it? Yes, because it is going to attract them. So that's why, isn't it? Constant prices, stable prices. Constant means if the inflation rate is 0, it is not said to be good, isn't it? For growth, to give them, isn't it, encouragement, what is needed? Inflation. But in between 3 to 4%. Right now in India, we are going for 4%, isn't it? 4%. Okay, 4% inflation, up to 4%, isn't it? Better to go for in between 3 to 4. If the rate of inflation, if it is in between 3 to 4%, so without hurting the consumers very badly, it is going to encourage the investors, the producers, the drivers of the country, and unless they do the production, we cannot move forward, isn't it? And this is the policy of not only government of India, but of the whole world. Let the country move forward through increase in production. Because when production is taking place, what will happen? Income will be generated, isn't it? Okay. So relationship between inflation and growth, it seems it is positive, isn't it? It is positive, means direct. 4% inflation is said to be a necessary condition. Okay. So what type of relation it is persisting right now? Inflation growth. It's a direct inverse. If the rate of inflation is in between 3 to 4%, yes, growth is going to be there. Inflation, isn't it, is necessary for growth. Remember, this question came, ki growth is coupled with, the answer is inflation. But it should be in between 3 to 4%. So up to 4% rate of inflation, growth is, and inflation, they are directly related, isn't it? Okay, now come to the second side. If rate of inflation is 4% or up to 4%, isn't it? Drivers means the producers, they will be encouraged. They will be encouraged. It means, isn't it, if the rate of inflation is in between 30 to 40%, they should be encouraged further. You people are producers. So if the rate of inflation is in between 3 to 4%, you are encouraged. Isn't it? It means if the rate of inflation, isn't it, is in between 30 to 40%, you will be encouraged further. What is the case? Yes or no? And if it is in between 300 to 400%, your encouragement level will be very high, isn't it? Is it the case? No. What may be the reason? What may be the reason, isn't it? Because in between the producers and the consumers, only one thing is common, price. And when prices, they cross a certain limit, consumers, they start losing purchasing power of money, isn't it? And definitely demand in the country will come down, isn't it? And they cannot ignore this side because they are producing for whom? Consumer. So what happens basically? The relationship between growth and inflation is a very unique, isn't it? Okay, it's a two-way relation. Up to 4%, I said up to 4%, relationship is positive. Means growth is, inflation is necessary for growth. But once rate of inflation exceeds 4%, this relationship becomes inverse. Isn't it? Means high rate of inflation is going to hurt the growth rate very, very badly, isn't it? It's a two-way relationship, isn't it? Yes, it's a called growth-inflation paradox, isn't it? The relationship between growth and inflation, I say it's a two-way relation, isn't it? Up to 4% is a positive, direct, isn't it? In fact, inflation is a precondition for growth. But once the rate of inflation exceeds 4%, the relationship becomes inverse, isn't it? It means high rate of inflation is going to hurt the growth rate, isn't it? Okay, in India, except for the last 1 year, because in the international market, not only price of crude oil, but price of commodities also they have fallen. So you can say WPI, CPI, they are very low now. In WPI, it was in a negative term, remain negative under negative term for at least 1 year. Now it has shown sign of recovery. Okay, so but if you see the data for last 7 to 8 years, the rate of inflation average, even the WPI, it has remained in between 6 to 8%, means second stage. CPI in between 8 to 10%. Now it is the main measure of inflation in India. Earlier it was WPI. Now we have moved from WPI to CPI. Okay, so I am taking the average data for the last 7 to 8 years. WPI, month-wise it is fluctuating, but overall, for the last 6 to 7 years, it was in between 6 to 8%. CPI, it was in between 8 to 10%. It means in India, the relationship between inflation and growth has become inverse. And because of that, the problem has been created in between RBI and the government, RBI is working on inflation theory, government is working on growth theory. Okay, come to the main point, So right now we are going to discuss the second side of this relationship, growth versus inflation. And rate of inflation is very high. That's why high rate of growth, high rate of inflation, it has hurt the growth rate very, very badly. Okay. Now, when rate of inflation is very high, definitely consumers are going to be hurt because their purchasing power of money, it will decrease. But I'm asking from you people, inflation right now in India is there everywhere, Yes, everywhere. Earlier, prior to 2009, inflation was in the nature, you can say, it was temporary in nature, mainly caused by, two reasons. Price of crude oil and price of food items. And these two are very volatile, And when things became normal, rate of inflation was coming down, But now inflation has become chronic in nature. It means now inflation there everywhere, Okay, this is the major thing what we have seen in India. Prior to November 1999, inflation was temporary in nature, mainly caused by two reasons, Price of crude oil and food prices, And nowadays, it's not because of only these two factors, Now in India, inflation has become chronic in nature. Okay, inflation there everywhere. Now there are three sectors. See what the problem of government of India is facing right now. There are three sectors where production is taking place: primary, secondary and tertiary. And inflation there everywhere. Are you spending on the product of primary sector? Are you spending on the product of primary sector? Yes or no? Where? Food items. Are you spending on the product of secondary sector? Yes. Where? Mobile phone. And are you spending on services? Yes. So we are spending on the product of these three sectors everywhere, and inflation everywhere. Now, because of high rate of inflation, we are discussing the negative side. See what exactly is happening. Why government of India is making changes in some policy? Now, because of inflation, purchasing power of the money is lost. Okay, let us go for some example. Last year, you were earning 10,000. This year also, you are earning 10,000. But the purchasing power of the money, of last year, it was higher than this year's 10,000 because of inflation. Okay, last year you were earning 10,000. This year also you are earning 10,000. So last year, since purchasing power was more, you were able to buy, 10 things. And this year, you will not be able to buy 10 things. You will be able to buy only 8 things. It does not mean that you have saved the money. It's because of inflation. Now listen to this example again. Last year, by taking very simple examples, you can make this subject very, very easy. Last year, you were able to buy 10 things. This year, you are able to buy only 8 things. Now see the same thing from different angle. Last year, 10 producers were able to produce and sell, and this year only 8 producers will be able to produce and sell. So 2 producers are going to suffer. 2 producers. Now you have to find these 2 producers, they will belong to the primary sector, secondary sector or tertiary sector. Isn't it? And this must be known to the government, isn't it? Because these two producers, whatever they are the first victim of inflation. So these producers, they will belong to the primary sector or secondary sector or tertiary sector.
It depends.
You cannot guess. You cannot guess. You must be knowing. These two producers, they will belong to the primary sector, secondary sector or tertiary sector. It should be known to the government before government can make the policy. Who will decide who are going to be these two producers? It will be decided by the government or by you people? It will be decided by you people, isn't it? What the problem with the Israel is, they are very technical, isn't it? They go through the books. Behavior of Indian economy. Don't do that. See your behavior. The way you behave, your economy is going to behave, isn't it? Okay, let me discuss by taking yours example and see the problem, isn't it? Last year also 2 questions came on the same issue. This year also questions are going to come. Okay, now see your preference order. You are spending and you are spending on the product of all these 3 sectors, primary, secondary and tertiary. Okay, can you tell me about your preference order? The first preference you people give to the product of primary sector, secondary or tertiary? Sure?
Yes, sir.
Why primary? Last year, what about last year? Same. And in the future? It means in your preference order, isn't it? Primary goods are always going to come first, isn't it? Last year also, you were having 4 chapati. This year also, you were having 4 chapati, isn't it? Despite inflation there. So demand for the primary goods, it has remained the same. You have not cut the demand despite inflation, isn't it? And you said you are always going to give first preference to primary goods, isn't it? So it means last year also I said you were having 4 chapati. This year also you are having 4 chapati. So your demand, isn't it, for the primary goods, it has not changed despite inflation. It is remaining the same, isn't it? It's inelastic. It's a perfectly inelastic. Demand for primary goods, particularly the basic necessities, they are called price and income inelastic. They don't change with the level of price and your income. It is going to remain the same, isn't it? Okay, it means since you are giving first preference to the primary goods, do you think it is making the producers of the primary goods totally safe? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it? Do you think the producers of the primary goods, in it, they are going to suffer because of inflation? Because of inflation, demand for their product is going to come down? No, isn't it? They were safe, they are safe and they will be safe, isn't it? Till you behave in this manner. And you are not going to change your preference order, isn't it? So there is going to be no, isn't it? They are not going to be, isn't it? There isn't any fear in their mind, in the minds of the primary goods producer. Because of inflation, demand for our product will come down. In fact, because of growing population, demand for their product is going to increase, isn't it? So do you think they will keep on producing at the same rate or they will cut down the rate of production? They will have to, in fact, increase the rate of production, isn't it? Because of growing population. It means growth rate of the primary goods, it is independent of rate of inflation. Me. Growth rate of primary sector, isn't it? It is independent of inflation, isn't it? But still you can say growth rate of agriculture, it is fluctuating. Sometime 2.2, sometime 4.4. It's not because of inflation, it's because of monsoon. What happened last 2 years? El Nino. So growth rate of agriculture, very low, almost a negative term, isn't it? So growth rate of agriculture, still it is fluctuating, isn't it? Sometime going up, sometime going down. But, isn't it? It's not because of inflation, it's because of other reasons, isn't it? Because of other reasons, you know better, isn't it? Mainly because of our dependence on monsoon. Okay, so finally we are concluding. Last year, 10 producers were able to produce and sell. This year only 8. So the two producers, isn't it, who were able to produce and sell last year, they won't be able to produce and sell this year. So one thing is confirmed from this conclusion, that these two producers, they won't belong to primary sector. They will either belong to, isn't it, the secondary sector or tertiary sector. I hope you are getting the point. Okay. Yes.
Sir, but due to inflation, rate of seeds have been increased.
Yes.
Then won't be there any effect on farmers?
The prices are going to increase. That's why, isn't it? It is going to make up the cost.
How come they are safe then?
Now see, because of their situation pathetic, they are not able to produce more because of some other reasons. It's not because demand for their product has come down. Are you getting the point? Isn't it? They are not able to produce. Isn't it? They are not getting the high quality sales. Isn't it? Some problems are there. Problems of finance are there. Isn't it? So because of that, isn't it? Unfavorable monsoon. So because of that, production is very low. Isn't it? Our growth rate of agriculture may be very low. But it's not because demand for their product has come down. Are you getting this point or not? Isn't it? So these two producers, they won't belong to primary sector, isn't it?
I have one question.
Yes.
If I am a grower and I grow pulses, and if the price of pulses are high, and that's basically feeding into the inflation rate,
Why price is high? That is the point. Because of demand or maybe hoarding.
maybe hoarding or
Okay.
any other reason, but that is basically feeding into inflation, isn't it?
That will.
Feeding into the inflation factor, the rate of inflation.
Inflation is going to increase inflation, isn't it? This is what you want to say.
But if inflation is increasing because of the reason that pulses rate are increasing,
So
price-
definitely it will encourage production of pulse again.
That's what I'm saying. So
Isn't it?
wouldn't that encourage farmers to grow more pulses?
So they should be producing more. Suppose price of pulse this year it is increasing. So it is going to encourage the producers to grow pulses more, isn't it? But still they are unable to increase the production.